All right, let's be real for a second. I think we've all been there. It's 11 o'clock. You're doom scrolling through Zillow and you find the one. It has that perfect farm sink, the awesome wraparound front porch, and the price tag doesn't immediately make you cry. But then reality hits. You're wondering, is that a charming crack in the front porch or is that signs of a catastrophic foundation issue? And is that roof original just to the house or to last century? Well, today on the You Ask the Pros Answer podcast, we're taking the guesswork out of the biggest purchase of your life. Today, we've got our very own Kara Hignutt in the hot seat. She's a current renter, but aspires to make the jump into home ownership. So grab a coffee, pull up a chair, unless you're driving. Please don't do that. And let's find out what you actually need to know before you sign those papers. From the first shingle to the final deck board, your home is your biggest investment. But in a world of rising costs and contractor red flags, how do you know who to trust? This is the You Ask the Pros Answer podcast. Hey, welcome to the You Ask the Pros Answer podcast. Your questions answered by the pros you trust, presented by Pro Exteriors. Now, if you're listening closely, you might notice that the room sounds a little bit quieter today. And that's because our resident expert, the pro himself, Aaron Rodgers, he is out doing what he does best, fixing homes, which leaves the studio to myself. And as I mentioned just a little bit ago, to Kara Hignutt. Kara is our marketing assistant, but today we are talking to Kara because she and her fiance, Colin, are current renters, but they aspire to be homeowners. Kara, welcome. How are you?
Howdy. Good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here. Okay, so I'll be honest. We had planned to have a very technical conversation about home buying, and Aaron was going to answer those questions. But since he's not here to stop us, we're going to have a much different conversation. So, full transparency, I am not a licensed contractor, but my wife and I have purchased our fair share of homes over the last decade and a half or so. And I will share some more about our experiences coming up soon. But first, Kara, I want to get to know you and your thought process here first. So, as I mentioned at the outset, we've all done it. We've been scrolling Zillow or Redfin or realtor.com. You find the house that looks perfect. I want to know, what is that one must-have feature that makes you immediately send the link to Colin?
Oh, that's a tough one. And it's not even about a house, so I feel pretty bad about saying this. I love big yards with lots of trees.
Okay.
That's similar to where I grew up at. So anytime I see a nice house with a nice private yard, I'm sending the link.
Yeah. I mean, that is perfectly valid. And I know in our service area, new construction is all over the place, and those lots are not always, but they are often very tiny and houses are crammed together. So when you find a place that has a yard, that's a big draw for people. Okay, so being an adult is scary enough, and then you start to add all these different facets of life into it, getting married, buying a house, buying cars, buying your first refrigerator or first nice vacuum cleaner. I remember going and buying our first nice vacuum cleaner and being excited about it and thinking, goodness, this is adulthood. Right now, I would imagine as a renter, if you have an issue with your AC, it's one call to your landlord and you trust that they're going to take care of it. So what is that biggest fear that you currently have about making the jump to where you suddenly become the landlord?
I think it's a big one, but just price, having to actually pay a maintenance man to fix it or a contractor to replace the roof or anything. So I think it would be actually having to take responsibilities for those repairs or anything that goes wrong. Because right now we're submitting a request online and it's fixed by the end of the week.
Yeah, and so there's not really any budgeting that goes into like, well, we need to have this saved up so that if or when this thing goes wrong, we're not panicked or have to go without.
Mm-hmm.
I think back to building sandcastles as a kid or helping out one of my kids like build a sandcastle, and at least for me, it was never done. Or like building a fort with my friends as a kid. The fun of it was the building part. It like once the fort was done, you're like, all right, now what do we do? And I mention that because in a lot of ways, home ownership is like the grown-up version of that. Like, yes, you buy the house, but it's never done. Like there are always things to be cleaned, maintained, repaired, fixed. And it's rewarding, and there's a sense of accomplishment and pride that goes into that. But obviously it can be scary and challenging at times. But anyway, let's move on. On a scale of 1 to 10, so 10 being like you are influenced heavily by the following, 1 being like, no, I'm my own person. How much has HGTV brain or TikTok scrolling, Pinterest searching, how much has that influenced your wish list versus what you actually think you can afford? Like how practical are you when it comes to this topic?
I try to be practical, but like as you mentioned earlier, when you're doom scrolling at 11 o'clock at night, budget is out the window. I want the full farmhouse sink. I want the island in the middle of the kitchen. But then come morning, reality hits. Like that's not happening for us in our early 20s right now, or late 20s. So.
All right. So this was not in the list of questions I sent you ahead of time. So we'll see what you have to say about this. If you were building out your ideal home, whether it be new construction or an old house that's being like fixed up, what are some of those elements that you would want to have? Like money, no object, just in this scenario.
Definitely a good front wraparound porch. I also want a pool. Nobody wants to go to the community pool when you have one in your backyard. What else could I have? Actually, since working at Pro Exteriors, I have a little obsession with looking at roofs when I'm driving down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I want a really nice roof too. I told Colin, I want the Brava tiles and we need metal on these front dormers.
All right. So I feel like your wish list is not like outlandish. If you watch some of those shows on, well,
I actually thought of just one more thing.
Okay, go for it.
I don't even know what these are called, but the houses that have like the circular parts on the outside. I love those. I don't know what they're called, but I think they're so cute. And it reminds me of like a princess tower.
I know what you're talking about. Audience, I don't know what they're called either.
This is where we need an Aaron to answer our questions.
Yeah, I wonder if future Aaron could answer this for us. But so she's not talking about columns. She's talking about the almost like a bump out or tower that's built into the house, right? Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Get a nice spiral staircase in there and live out fairy tale dreams.
All right. I asked that just for fun, just because I don't know really what your tastes are. I know, some people might be like, I'd love a condominium where I don't have a yard and somebody takes care of that stuff for me still, even though I own the building. All right, let's keep things moving. So I'm going to share a little bit about, I'll call it my home buying resume. So Dawn and I, we've been married for 18 years. When we first got married, we rented, it was kind of like a townhouse. It was technically an apartment, but it was like a townhouse apartment. Then we rented my grandmother's house, and it was a big fixer-upper. It was awesome. It was on like 10 or 12 acres. Most of it was wooded. It was awesome until mold took over the basement, and Dawn was pregnant with Alex, and we're like, we should probably get out. So we purchased a townhouse that was built in 1986. So this would have been 2009, I guess, that we bought it. I'm trying to think. I guess we have townhouses here in southern Delaware. They seem like they're more common in the Baltimore area where I grew up, but connected to other townhouses on either side. And so we, didn't have much money. Most of what we did was DIY. There was one window that we had a friend who is a contractor replace, because quick fun story, and Dawn's off work today, so I don't know if she'll hear me sharing this story and hop in or not. I was working about 45 minutes away from home, and our daughter Alex was just a few weeks old. I mean, like tiny, tiny. And Dawn had Alex in this little bouncy seat and was sitting on our coffee table. Like, she was totally safe the way that the bouncy seat was. I think Dawn went to go get the mail. We had one of those communal mailboxes where you have to like walk down the sidewalk to it. Came back to the front door, realized she had locked herself out of the house. Like, no cell phone on her, nothing. Alex is, I don't know, maybe 5-6 weeks old at the time. And all we had inside was our dog, Louie, who is awesome. We miss him dearly. And Dawn, as the brand new mother, was like, well, I got to get back to my kids. So she walked around the back of the house, took our picnic table umbrella with the long metal pole and rammed it through our living room window, like shattering the glass so that she could get in to Alex. I didn't know any of this happened until, I believe, after it was all done. Because like I said, she didn't have her cell phone on her. I was working at a place where it was a call center, so I didn't have any access to, like, I couldn't just step out and answer my phone. Anyway, so that was one of the things where we actually had a professional come out and help us take care of it. But everything else, we replaced tile on the floors. My father-in-law helped me build a shed in the backyard. We did some landscaping. But for the most part, it was just like we replaced stuff as we could. Then we had the opportunity to purchase my other grandparents' house that had been built in the 1960s. So this was a house where I think people would call it charm. Like, it had a lot of charm, but it needed a lot of work. We pulled up the carpet that my grandparents had put down a couple decades prior to find that the whole house had hardwood floors, which was awesome. But there was a lot of pet stains from over the years. So before we moved in, we had the floors redone, but a lot of it we did ourselves. We did hire a contractor to do the kitchen. But then, sorry, I didn't realize this was going to be as cathartic as it is for myself. So just bear with me, audience.
I'm loving the stories.
The basement always had an issue with flooding. And if you walked out the back door, you would see that the yard sloped towards the house. I will give you this pro tip. You don't want your yard sloping towards the house. You want it sloping away from the house. So whenever there was heavy rain, there would end up water in the basement. Water's one thing. One day we went down in the basement and found a couple inches of sewer water. And come to find out, because this house was built in the 60s, the old terracotta pipe that went from our house to the city's sewage, over the years, tree roots had grown through the terracotta, because terracotta is just like a natural material, like clay that's formed into a pipe. And so we had sewage water all over our basement. and all over the stuff that we stored down there. It was not good. We had a sump pump that failed. And so sump pumps, are you familiar with what they do?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
So groundwater, water in the ground is a good thing. It's what allows wells to have water to feed to the house. But when groundwater gets to a certain point, you have this pump that's in your basement floor that actually pumps that water back out of your house so that you don't end up with flooding in your basement. They work great until they fail, and then you end up with water in your basement. So trying to think. So we had to replace that pump. The electrical was wonky because guidelines years and years and years ago were way different than they are now. So like if you were running your vacuum cleaner on one floor and your iron on the second floor, the lights would like dim and flicker. I felt like plugging things into outlets sometimes you were more apt to see sparks, like just these little things that if you were just visiting, you wouldn't notice it. But when you lived in the house, you're like, oh, good grief. But it had a lot of charm. Like those hardwood floors were beautiful, and it's something that we've not had since. So I'll move on so that our audience doesn't get super bored. In 2020, we moved to Delaware, to Southern Delaware, to Lincoln, and we purchased a new construction home from a small builder. One of the benefits of that was this guy and his son built a couple houses a year, as opposed to some of the bigger builders that are building hundreds, if not thousands of homes per year, which meant if you drive around, the next time you're driving, I know you're going to look at roofs because you mentioned that, but notice how many houses have shutters on the front windows. Like, how people have shutters on either side of their windows. But if you happen to see around the back of the house, notice how many don't have shutters on the back. It's very common that builders will put them on the front because that's what most people see, and they're just decorative anyway. Most shutters aren't actually able to be flipped in and protect your windows. But this builder, because he was smaller and took pride in his work, he actually put shutters all around our house. So it's just like one of those little details that you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. There were some other things that, like, he painted our garage. If you look in a lot of people's garages, you'll see the drywall just has mud on it. So you'll see like the white streaks that run up and down, and then like they'll mud the nail holes. Well, he actually painted the garage so it looked kind of like the inside of our house. And then in 2024, my family moved to Northern Kentucky, where we are now, and we bought a house built by a large builder. So in our neighborhood, there are 2 builders that are allowed to build, and we bought a house from one of those. Some of the benefits of that is they have a huge network of subcontractors and contractors and suppliers that they work with all the time, which means that like our flooring, our cabinets were made and installed by reputable companies that have good warranties. But the downside of it is they put these houses up super quick. And I don't think we realized just how quick until we moved in and got to see other houses being built and realized there's no way that they put as much care and attention into our house here as the small builder did in Delaware. So we're a year and a half into our new home, and we have issues. We've had issues with our air conditioning, where we've had the person come out somewhere between 6 and 10 times in a year and a half. Thankfully, because it was new, it was under warranty, so we didn't have to pay anything. But it does mean either taking time off of work or, well, in my case, working remotely. It means like working weird hours so that when the person's there, I'm able to take off. We have weird gaps in our flooring on our main level. We have the luxury vinyl plank flooring, which looks nice from a distance, but it's like really thin vinyl pieces that just are made to look like hardwood flooring. And a lot of those planks want to separate, and we'll have the company come out and fix them. And then a month later, they separate again. Anyway, all that to say, we've been in townhouses built in the 1980s, older houses built in the 1960s, and then brand new construction. And there's pros and cons to all of that. Have you and Colin talked about, like, are you guys new build people, or are you old soul kind of looking for older stuff?
Yeah, I think we're a little bit more on the old soul style house. And like I mentioned earlier, with the new construction kind of homes that are currently taking over Sussex County, the yards are a little small. So I'd like to have some charm in my yard.
Yep. So that was, yeah. And Dawn is very much the old soul when it comes to houses. I love the look of them. After living in the house built in the 1960s, I'm not going to lie, I very much enjoy the brand new house.
I will say our friends own an older home. I'm not sure what year is born, but just from looking inside of older homes, they do have smaller like bathrooms and stuff. And I'm 6'1" and Colin is 6'7", so we do need something larger in that sense.
Yeah, it's definitely so. Smaller bathrooms, smaller closets. Typically, you'll see more closed off floor plans where, like, the kitchen is the kitchen and the dining room is the dining room and the living room is off of both of those things. Whereas both of the new construction houses we've bought, and now we specifically sought this out, our living space in the house where I'm recording this now, our kitchen, dining room, and living room is all just one big space, which is great 90% of the time. Like, if the kids want to watch TV while we're cooking dinner, that's not always awesome because we're making lots of noise. But in our house that was built in the 60s, the kitchen was much smaller, but then also we were separate from the kids while we were in the kitchen, So it all just comes down to preference. Okay, so Kara, you mentioned that part of the reason you are drawn to older homes, at least part of it, is that oftentimes you can find properties or lots that are a little bit bigger. Oddly enough, the house that we purchased in Delaware was on almost a full acre, which was pretty unique because, like, where we are now, I could very easily probably scream and our neighbors would hear us. That's a weird thing to say. But our house in Delaware, all the lots were about an acre, which is pretty big. And so our neighbors were further away from us, and that was a brand new neighborhood. So there are opportunities out there to find that, but you're right, it is less common for sure. All right, so I hear that you're more into the older charm. Here's what I will say, and this is unsolicited advice. You didn't ask me this. One of the things that I have enjoyed about our current brand new home, like when we first walked in, it was empty and there was no character like anywhere. All the walls were painted white. Yeah, there was just very little character. It felt very cold and stark. But that allows us to put our own touch on it. And so we've been able to, over time, just add little pieces here and there and change out some of the finishes as we've had the money to do it, to make it feel more like us and more like our style. Whereas sometimes with the older homes, the character is built in, and while that is nice, it is harder to change it and make it your own, if that makes sense. So we found even things like changing out the light fixtures in our kitchen and dining room allows us to make it feel more like us. Even the hardware on the cabinets, so changing out the pulls or the handles, has just made it feel less like a new construction and more like us. Plus, if you have pets, they will very quickly make it not feel like a new home because they will destroy things very quickly. So there's that. All right. I want to move on to some things that I wish I had known before buying a house. So this first section I will call the other money. You save up for a down payment, you go to the bank or you talk with a realtor and they get you connected with a mortgage company. You get pre-approved for what you can afford. This is not a financial podcast by any stretch, but I will say one word of advice is do not go to the very top of what you're pre-approved for. Try to fall underneath of that just to give yourself some wiggle room. But once you get all of that out of the way and you buy the house, the first couple of months, there will likely be things that you didn't expect to need for that house to function. So to put a dollar amount on it, I'll say conservatively, probably $3,000 to $5,000. And this is not meant to scare you. It's just reality. You will learn Home Depot's aisles very quickly. Like you will know where everything is. So lawnmower. So if you do find a place that has a bigger yard, you'll either need a push mower if it's a smaller yard, or if you or Colin really like walking, or a riding mower if it's a bigger yard. You'll likely want curtains, especially if it's an older house where the previous owner maybe had older curtains that are just kind of dingy, or you want something that's more your style. Or if it's a new build, there won't be any window treatments. And so you'll walk in there and the first night you're like, I can see everything outside and everything outside can see everything inside. And that's just like, it's weird. Trash cans, not just like trash service for your house, but like you want to have a trash can in most of the rooms. And so you've got to get them at some point.
I did not realize how randomly expensive trash cans are.
There's no need for it. I don't know why
When we moved into our apartment, forgot a trash can, obviously. And so we ran to Dollar General that night. And from Dollar General even was like $30 for the worst trash can ever. We don't even use it anymore.
And if Colin's into technology or something, he'll find the one that automatically opens when you walk up to it. And that'll be like $200-$300.
Yep.
Yeah. If you want to paint some of the rooms, like before you get all your furniture set up, paint is weirdly expensive. It's one of the cheapest ways to make your house feel like your home. And it's a very easy way to, every house kind of has a smell and you become nose blind to it. Even if the smell isn't bad, like every house has some kind of a smell. Paint is, I think, the easiest way to fix that. It's amazing how much smell is in your walls and in your floors. So if you end up with a house that has wall-to-wall carpet, you'll likely want to get a shampooer, which you'll use a few times a year. And you're like, I can't believe I'm spending this much money on this thing that I'm going to use 2 or 3 times a year. And then I have to find a place to store it. But you can rent them, but typically you can buy one for less than you could rent one a couple times. So there's just these like random things, cleaning supplies, snow shovels. So again, I don't say any of this to scare you or deter you, because I think homeownership is awesome. But there's like these random things that you would never be like, oh yeah, we should probably budget for that. I want to talk a little bit about inspections. So you may or may not know, but when you go to buy a house, unless you're buying the house in cash, like if you found a few $100,000 that you just like, all right, I'm just going to buy this house, you will have to get it inspected for the bank or the mortgage lender to say, okay, we're going to give you this money. And so you'll hire a professional home inspector, not somebody like that works with us at Pro Exteriors that can come and do a roof or siding inspection. This is like somebody that is licensed, that knows all the different trades, at least like cursory knowledge of electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all that stuff. They will walk through the house and they will give you a full written report, typically with photographs that'll say, okay, your roof is 12 years old, your heating and air conditioning unit is 25 years old, here's the life expectancy of it. It's a hugely valuable asset, not just for the bank or the lender, but for you as the buyer, because you're like, okay, well, that roof is going to need to be replaced in 2 years. The heating and air conditioning, that's good. Like, we're good to go for a while. So not just for like a mental checklist, but then you can use that as a bargaining chip for negotiating the price, because the homeowner may not want to buy that new roof right before they sell their home, but they might be apt to say, okay, well, we'll lower the price of the house $15,000, knowing that you're going to have to replace that roof. And then you end up with that money that you can then use either for the roof or Colin's really nice trash can. But what I was just talking about was the official inspection. But as you guys walk through the house with the realtor, use your realtor as a resource, because he or she is in homes every day, like all day, and they know what to look out for. But if you're in a basement of a place and it smells like a wet dog and that homeowner doesn't have a wet dog, there's something else going on there. Like, just use your judgment. It's really easy to become attached to a house, especially when you've looked at the pictures 100 times on your phone before you ever step foot in it. And then you walk in and you will, I think we do this with people too. Like, you become infatuated with it and you refuse to see any of the shortcomings. You're like, oh, that window pane that has condensation on it, that's fine. Only to find
a fish pond in the back. How am I going to say no?
Yeah. Like, you will be very quick to overlook a lot of things if it's the house that you have like set your mind on. So as hard as it is, we always would try to just be like, okay, we're going to take each house for what it is and try not to get super attached to it. Like, if you've ever been to an animal rescue, it's very hard to like not want to take every cat or dog home. Mm-hmm. Cats and dogs are relatively small investments in comparison to a home. So that brings me to the emotional roller coaster. So searching for a home is a ton of fun. It's fun to dream about like the future projects in whatever house you end up in. It's fun to search on all the different apps. But I can remember when we were preparing to move to Delaware, it was in the middle of COVID. And so there were strict guidelines. There was even times where our realtor had to FaceTime us. So we would drive down to Delaware from Maryland. We would sit outside the house. He would walk in the house and FaceTime us. Like, if somebody else lived in the house and it wasn't empty because of COVID protocols. So we would have to like be like, oh, can you walk to the kitchen? Can you open that cabinet? It was very strange. But we found this house. It was a new construction build. It was in a new neighborhood. There was a pond right next to the house. So there wasn't even a house directly next to us. And we're like, this is the one. It's going to be awesome. And here, 6 years later, I can't remember exactly what happened, but I do know it didn't work out. And for a couple hours, we were like, well, that's it. We're not going to find a house here in Delaware. And I want to say it was either the next day or was within a week, we ended up finding the house that we eventually purchased. And it ended up being the perfect house for us. And we initially thought, well, it's over. There's no other house out there for us. So I know you and Colin are both sports fans, and you know what an emotional roller coaster like a whole season can be like for your favorite team or like a tournament game or whatever. So purchasing a house is very much like that. So I'd say just one of you has to be the chill one. One of you's got to be.
Colin, I think you're listening.
And it might go back and forth because he might find one that he's like totally set on, and you might have to be the one that's like, listen, I don't know, you might have to be the level-headed one at some point. So, all right, here's the thing. I've done a lot of talking, and some of it's been meandering and rambly. I want to give you an opportunity to just ask some quick hitting questions that you might be sitting on or that maybe you've had.
Yeah, well, I guess speaking of Colin, I think everybody has their own tastes in decor and colors and aesthetics. What do you suggest on if I disagree with Colin and think he has terrible taste?
So I kind of wish Colin was here to hear this because you guys are preparing to get married. So this is a home remodeling podcast, but I'll share some relational advice. The woman is always right. With that said, I think the longer you've been with someone, the more your interests and your tastes start to like, if you're over here and he's over here, over time, they start to overlap more. It doesn't mean that you become that person, but there are fewer things that you completely disagree on. And so I would say, A, you're not going to find the one perfect house. You might find a perfect house for you, but it's not the only one in the entire world. So that's one thing. I would also say it's a give and take. So just like everything else in relationships, if there's a must-have on your list, allow him to have a must-have on his list too. Like if it's, I don't know, like a workshop space, or I don't know, it could be any number of things.
I already know what his would be. So,
Yeah. What other questions?
I guess skipping around a little bit, is there actual benefits or differences between the 15 and the 30-year mortgages?
Well, again, for legal purposes, I'll say this is not a financial podcast. And so nothing we're saying here today is to provide our audience with official financial advice. But what I will say is, if Dawn and I would have been able to afford a 15-year mortgage, we would have done it, because you will pay, just like if you've ever had any student loans, you will pay so much more in finance fees and interest over the span of the loan than the actual like principal amount. I'm really bad at math, but what I will say is our mortgage every month, a significant percentage of the amount that we're paying is just going to the interest that is on that loan. So if we could have afforded a 15-year mortgage, yeah, we totally would have done it. And I would recommend you do the same. The reality for a lot of Americans is that the 30-year is what you have to do. And it is daunting when you're like, okay, how old am I going to be in 30 years? But it's what we had to do. And I'll equate it again to student loans. It's what I had to do when I went to college. It was like, okay, if I'm going to go to school, I'm going to have to take out a loan. And my options were what they were at the time. And I couldn't like make money appear out of thin air. So, yeah, I'd say go for it if you've got the ability to do a 15. But the reality is a lot of us, 30 is the norm.
I had one last one is, does Colin really have to clean the gutters every year?
So one benefit to new construction, and this is not all new construction falls into this category, but both of the new houses that we've purchased, because they were in brand new neighborhoods, had very few mature trees, which means I have not had to clean the gutters every year. However, when we lived at that house that was built in the 1960s, we actually did have gutter guards on it, which helped tremendously. I probably shouldn't say this, but I did not clean the gutters every year there either. However, that might have contributed to some of the flooding issues we had in the basement because of Aaron and I have talked about on other episodes of this very show, when your gutters do fill up with pine needles, leaves, debris, whatever, and your gutters start spilling out, so you get a heavy rain, or like we just had, like you get a huge snowfall and then that starts to melt. If your gutters fill up and the water starts to overflow over the front of them, all of that water is going straight down towards your foundation and will eventually erode the foundation, which causes huge issues. So my company answer would be yes, Colin most definitely needs to clean the gutters every year, or between now and March 31st, with any full roofing or siding project through Pro Exteriors, you guys would qualify for free Leaf Blaster Pro stainless steel micro mesh gutter guards. So there's that too. All right. What I will say is that at least looking at the gutters every year is wise. Even getting up on a ladder and looking at the roof, or standing out far enough in your front yard where you can look up and just visually check and make sure you're not missing shingles, is a good idea. And even just taking a walk around the house to make sure that everything looks like it should. We've had a lot of wind here recently, and I noticed a piece of siding laying in our front yard, and it was not ours, thankfully, but that means that somebody in our neighborhood is missing a piece of siding, and these are all brand new houses. So, Colin, if you're listening, you don't have to clean your gutters every year, but I would recommend that at least someone inspects them. And shameless plug, Pro Exteriors will come out and look at your gutters for free. So there's that.
That sounds like a solid plan.
I want one takeaway from you. What is one thing that you feel better about? You got to pick one.
It's got to be a good one, so I've got to think about it.
Well, I'm going to ask what's one thing you feel worse about too. So you can give me either one.
Ooh. Geez, I think the one thing I feel better about is knowing that no matter what we pick, a new construction, an older, more charmful houses, that either way, we're going to have to take things one step at a time to truly make it ours.
Yeah. Yep. Is there anything that you are feeling more anxious about than when we started this conversation?
Basements. Just basements.
So, yeah, obviously there in southern Delaware, I guess basements are less of a factor, right? Because that's less common. Did you grow up with one?
No. I mean, like the crawl space underneath the house. But yeah, no. I know like Colin grew up in Ellicott City, and they had the finished basement and everything.
So we had a crawl space in Delaware, and we had zero issues with it. Yeah. So if you don't have a basement, then that takes away that worry.
Add that to the list.
Yeah. Here's my last piece of unsolicited advice. Buy the worst house on the best street, not the other way around. I mean, you don't have to like seek out the worst house, but I mean, find the best neighborhood, find the best piece of property. Everything in the house can be replaced or fixed over time. If you end up with the nicest house on the worst street, you're not going to enjoy living there. And you can decide what makes it the best street. You know, that's totally up to your preferences.
I like that quote.
Yeah. Well, Kara, thanks for joining me today, and good luck to you guys.
Thanks for all the advice, unsolicited or not.
Sure thing. All right, that is all we have for you today on the You Ask the Pros answer. Hey, would you please help us get the word out about the show? The best way you can do that is to leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, follow us on social media, or simply tell a friend. Also, if you are watching on YouTube, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, before we go, we want to hear from you. What are some of the questions you have related to exterior home remodeling? The process involved, the options that are out there. You can send your questions to info@askproexteriors.com and place "You Ask" in the subject. If you are facing an upcoming home project, we hope episodes like this empower you to tackle it with confidence. Remember, knowledge is power, and a little bit of research can go a long way. Until next time, happy homeowning. The You Ask the Pros Answer podcast is produced in-house by the Pro Exteriors team. Pro Exteriors is the exterior contracting division of Empire Construction Group, LLC. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice. For more answers to your questions, please subscribe to this channel and podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Do you have an upcoming home remodeling project? Find more answers to your questions at askproexteriors.com. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Would you please help us out by hitting that subscribe button? That would be awesome. Also, if you never want to miss another one of our uploads, please be sure to hit that notification bell. All right, thanks. See ya.